Okay, Roger, welcome back. We're going to do a really special. We've now made it through four. We're going to do our fifth class a little bit differently. We're going to look at 5 or 6 poems instead of like 20. And we're going to relook at some that we've looked at before. And we're going to spend a little more time talking about them. So I'm pretty excited about this. And thank you
Yeah,
again. Thank you again for curating these and putting them together. What were you going to say?
yeah, likewise. It's great to be back and reading Rumi poems, especially with a companion like yourself,
It's
and
good to be
having
here.
really swell conversations about these, figuring out these poems that probably they have several layers of meaning to them, and let's try to get deep with them.
Yeah, and so now we're doing it only on Wednesdays. So next Wednesday we're going to have a burst of academia for the first time into the class. We're going to read some essays on from philosophical perspectives, arguing about mysticism. So let's put that out of our mind and enjoy the deep dive. And thank you for pulling these together. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to switch this to that, and I'm going to ask you to go whenever you feel like it. Thank you.
Okay, so then the first one is called Enough Words. Okay. How does a part of the world leave the world? How can wetness leave water? Don't try to put out a fire by throwing on more fire. Don't wash a wound with blood. No matter how fast you run, your shadow more than keeps up. Sometimes it's in front. Only full overhead sun diminishes your shadow. But that shadow has been serving you. What hurts you blesses you. Darkness is your candle. Your boundaries are your quest. I can explain this, but it would break the glass cover on your heart. And there's no fixing that. You must have shadow and light source both. Listen and lay your head under the tree of awe. When from that tree feathers and wings sprout on you, be quieter than a dove. Don't open your mouth for even a coo. When a frog slips into the water, the snake cannot get it. Then the frog climbs back out and croaks, and the snake moves toward him again. Even if the frog learned to hiss, still the snake would hear through the hiss the information he needed, the frog voice underneath. But if the frog could be completely silent, then the snake would go back to sleeping, and the frog could reach the barley. The soul lives there in the silent breath, and that grain of barley is such that when you put it in the ground, it grows. Are these enough words, or shall I squeeze more juice from this? Who am I, my friend? Here at the end, it seems like Rumi is addressing his secretary, Halaj, amusingly, as so often happens after he dictates the poem, and his secretary faithfully even writes these words in the end of the poem. The part where we listen about the glass case on our heart breaking, and that is a kind of an irreversible breaking. That's kind of distressing, or potentially distressing. Would you like to share your thoughts on this poem, or would you prefer to do a burst of poems and have a chat on the end only? You were speaking, but your connection on the Twitter space just blinked out. So we have a comma with a black hole as a profile pic, very, very creative and very singular. Welcome. I hope your singularity is in order and healthy. We've just read a poem by Rumi called Enough Words. And guys or gals, feel free to request microphone, as it's always very interesting to listen to different perspectives and have conversations as using the poems as the conversation starters. Okay, so this poem that we just read from Rumi, called Enough Words, it basically mentions the inadequateness of language to speak about matters of the soul, of the self. Um, it's very, even for someone like Rumi, seasoned veteran mystic, even he expresses difficulty of talking about matters of the self and the soul using words. And so he even used this visual metaphor of the frog with the snake, and for the frog to reach the barley, as in for the self to figure out itself, it better remain silent, because if the self keeps talking, it will just attract the intellect that perhaps is what the snake means, and the intellect will just keep entertaining the self, and the self will be unable to learn about the core of the self, which we might call the qalb, as in the Islamic mysticism is mentioned, the core of being of the self, the qalb. And possibly that's what Rumi was mentioning here. Feel free to give your 50 cents, Ben. Yeah. Is it who is the author? Oh, okay. Feel free to read. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for reading that poem. It's a really interesting poem. It makes us wonder whether he's emphasizing the importance of the significance of giving, not what is given, but the meaningfulness of the act of giving. Even if we give something to someone who already has something, if the giving is earnest and comes from the heart, then the very act of giving is really what matters, not the actual thing that passes from one hand to the other. And there's also seemingly a critique of closing things within containers, which cuts them away from the rest of the universe, even if it's just in thought. Like you think of yourself as isolated from the universe, and that might help. That might be helpful for us doing our daily lives. But when we want to figure out deeper questions about the cosmos, there are a bunch of traditions that emphasize the interconnectedness of everything. Um, Religion in general does that because it's in the name. Religare means reconnect in Latin. And for instance, Buddhists emphasize that people have actually no selves. When you think about it, they are so interconnected with everything around them that we kind of dissolve into the rest of the cosmos. Yeah, so I think that's what I kind of read from it, just at a glance. And so yeah, Rumi is always a great source that's kind of nourishes our soul, and it doesn't just make us think intellectually, it also over supercharges our emotions in a very positive way.
I failed to find a solution to the headset, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
have
the
one sent
essential
to me.
Rumi, yeah, it's really good. It's a really expensive book, um, and it's still much smaller than the Masnavi, but it has some of Rumi's really most greatest hits, basically. But it has some of Rumi's really most greatest hits, basically.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's so rich. For that particular poem, it was some kind of, I think there's some kind of connection I'm trying to make with, like, that the guy was like a seeker with that water. Somehow was, the aspect of seeking anything, that we all have like this drop of water or something in common. I really like what you said about being anti-container, maybe even anti-materialistic, but then at the same time in possession of all, like, the most gold, the most that you can get rid of, the most water that you have such a superabundance of. And like, the guy was looking for something, seeking for, I mean, the aspect of everything, we have things in common. So I think when you don't have something to compare, like something much greater to, then this seems great. And it's no fault of our own sometimes. I think the problem is when we're like turning our back on, or like shunning something which would be more. It's like somebody's trying to show us something that's like, here's something more. We're like, no, I don't want to see that. That doesn't sit comfortably with me. And then there's an aspect of that we're ready for something or whatever. People just aren't ready for that yet. Or
it's like having a newbie kind of perspective on approaching things, kind of approaching them always as a newcomer, even though we might have wisdom and knowledge and whatnot, but trying to look at things with a fresh perspective, and completely forecasting arrogance.
Yeah, it's key always to keep that open mind and perspective in a way. Always looking at things fresh to see what they really are, or something like that.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to mention is me and Zara. Poem as well. It's kind of like a story poem. So what I propose to Zara is I will read the narrator and also the camel, which is the gray and orange text, and then the mouse is the blue text. Okay, Zara. So I'll start. Okay. The mouse and the camel. How the mouse pulled the rope attached to the camel's nose ring and
All
began
right.
self-
You're gonna have to add me as speaker on spaces, and then I'm
Excuse
just
me.
going to
A little
prioritize
mouse
spaces.
caught in his forelegs a camel's leading rope, and from emulation went off with it. By reason of the readiness with which the camel set out along with him, the mouse was duped into thinking himself a hero. The ray of his thought struck the camel. He, the camel, said aside, I will show thee presently. Enjoy thyself. All went well, till he, the mouse, came to the bank of a great river, at which any lion or wolf would have lost heart. There the mouse stopped and became paralyzed. The camel said, O my companion, o'er hill and plain, what is this standing still for? Why art thou dismayed? Step forward like a man, go into the river. Thou art my guide and leader. Don't halt midway and be dumbfounded. He, the mouse, said. So hold on, I'm giving you microphone so you can read the mouse's line. Let's see if you can.
This is
Go
a
ahead.
huge and deep river. I am afraid of being drowned, O comrade.
Said the camel, let me see the depth of the water. And he quickly set foot in it. The water, he said, is only up to the knee, O blind mouse. Wherefore didst thou become dismayed and lose thy wits? He, the mouse, replied, He, the camel, said, Another time, do not behave so boldly, lest thy body and soul be consumed by these sparks. Contend with mice like myself. A mouse has nothing to say to a camel. He, the mouse, said, The camel took pity. Hark, said he, jump up and sit on my hump. This passage has been vouchsafed to me. I would take across hundreds of thousands like thee. And then the narrator goes, Since you are not a prophet, go on the road after the prophets, that one day you may come from the pit of fleshliness to spiritual place and power. Be a vessel, since you are not a lord. Do not steer the boat yourself, since you are not the boatman. Since you are not spiritually perfect, do not take a shop by yourself alone. Be pliant to the hand, in order that you may become leavened like dough. Give ear to the divine command. Keep silence, be mute, since you have not become the tongue, mouthpiece of God. Be an ear. And if you speak, speak in the form of a request for explanation. Speak to the spiritual emperors as a lowly beggar. The beginning of pride and hatred is in worldly lust, and the rootedness of your lust is from habit. When an evil disposition becomes confirmed by habit, you are enraged with any one who restrains you. After you have become an eater of clay, any one who restrains you from eating clay is your enemy. Since idolaters are devoted to the idol, they are foes to them that prevent their access to it. Since Iblis had become accustomed to being leader, he in his folly regarded Adam with contempt, saying, "Is there another leader superior to me, so that he should be worshipped by one like me?" Leadership is poison, except to the spirit that from the beginning hath in himself abundance of the antidote. If the mountain is full of snakes, have no fear, for it is a mine of antidote within. When leadership has become a bosom friend to your brain, any one who breaks or thwarts you becomes as an ancient adversary. When any one contradicts your disposition or habit of mind, many feelings of hatred against him arise in you. He is tearing me, you say, from my ingrained disposition. He is making myself like a captain over me. Unless the evil disposition has become headstrong in him, how should the fire of passion blaze upon in him through being opposed? He may show some feigned courtesy to the opponent. He may make a place for himself in his heart. But he really hates him, because the evil disposition has waxed strong. The ant of worldly lust has through habit become as a snake. Kill the snake of lust in tribulation, else look you, your snake is become a dragon. But everyone deems his own snake an ant. Do you then seek the explanation of yourself, your real state, from him that is Lord of the heart? Until copper becomes gold, it does not know itself to be copper. Until the heart becomes a king, it does not know itself to be an insolvent. Do service to the elixir, like copper. Endure oppression, O heart, from him that holds the heart in fee. Who is it that holds the heart in fee? Know well, it is the lords of the heart, who, like day and night, are recoiling from the world. Do not find fault from the servant of God. Do not suspect the king of being a thief. So, a really interesting dialogue at the beginning, and then words of wisdom about the dangers of leadership without preparedness, a cautionary tale, and a warning for people who are eager to be leaders, and they are full of something inside themselves that is big and unruly like a dragon that they cannot tame, much less tame if they become if that dragon or snake becomes overgrown through their leadership. In our current day words, we would talk about the ego growing. So people that might start to climb the ladder of power, they might have started with a quite big ego to begin with, but then by seeing more people and more people as vessels to them, as instruments to them, probably their ego will inflate even greater. And so it's it's a really interesting poem, and yeah, I'll let you guys also comment on it.
and
Yeah,
fed even
you
more.
can kind of tell
because
apart the people whose
people who
egos
don't
have
speak up and
overgrown
say
into
something,
dragons
more
by
truthfully
seeing the
in
sycophants
those
around them.
environments. So there's lots of dangers there,
The
to be sure.
You can kind of tell apart the people whose egos have overgrown into dragons by seeing the sycophants around them. The sycophants around people like Joseph Stalin, Louis the 14th, they were notoriously surrounded by sycophants who were contributing to inflating of their egos. And if someone would dare oppose them, that would be like opposing force of nature. Not a very wise thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, like even people we think are in esteem of very highly, like Alexander the Great or Caesar or Julius Caesar, are different people. They fell prey to, I believe it was like Caesar in the end being like recognized as a god, or or there's just different. I heard some really brutal examples before of like somebody being like, you know, you're the most eloquent of them all or whatever, and then like somebody was like would just doubt that and say that this person wasn't as good of an orator or something like that, and like lose their life, or I forgot it was somebody killed somebody's son or something. Oh, it was like they ended up like making target practice of the guy's son like right in front of him, and he was just like supposed to just sit there and take that because of that kind of level of tyranny and insanity, really.
Go ahead, Zara. Your hand is up, Zara. Or can you hear me?
Okay, just a quick note on the tech issues. What you should be aware. Yes. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yep.
You'll be able to hear me
Yep.
in a second. There's a bit of a delay. So just to straighten out what we've done with the tech issues is this. Everybody who's in the Twitter space right now, you should be aware that I just added you to the live stream. So I've added the Twitter space to the live stream. So typically we do these classes through live stream. There's a bit of a delay. So whatever we're talking about will come up afterwards. But I've muted us both, Roger, on the live stream. And anybody who wants to talk here is going to be a part of the class. Really quickly, this is our 5th class about mysticism, and we're going through Rumi's poems for a while to start out with. And we're doing them every Wednesday, and so we're going to try to work out these tech issues and make it possible to do both the live stream and the Twitter space at the same time. And we're trying to sort of prioritize the Twitter space right now. So I'm going to mute. And that was a really interesting poem. There's lots we can talk about. I'm going to probably stay muted mostly today. And then on Wednesday, we're going to talk about some scholarly philosophical approaches to understanding mysticism. But I'm going to mute myself because of the delay. And what we'll do is we'll just keep talking through the spaces, and that's being fed through the live stream, just so everybody knows. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Zara. Thanks for working these issues out. Also, regarding this poem, there's a part where Rumi mentions the snakes in the mountain. This is a clear reference to another poem that is called "The Rider and the Man Swallowed." Rather, the snake catcher. The snake catcher. Maybe we should read this one after the mouse and the camel, because I think it will give perspective of what Rumi actually means by the mountain full of snakes. What do you think, Zara? Okay, yeah, I think you mean okay. So I'll read the snake catcher. It's a quite interesting poem that will shed light on what he meant with that visual of the mountains with the snakes. Listen to this and hear the mystery inside. A snake catcher went into the mountains to find a snake. He wanted a friendly pet and one that would amaze audiences. But he was looking for a reptile, something that has no knowledge of friendship. It was winter. In the deep snow, he saw a frighteningly huge dead snake. He was afraid to touch it, but he did. In fact, he dragged the thing into Baghdad, hoping people would pay to see it. This is how foolish we've become. A human being is a huge mountain range. Snakes are fascinated by us, yet we sell ourselves to look at a dead snake. We are like beautiful satin used to patch burlap. Come and see the dragon I killed and hear the adventures. That's what he announced, and a large crowd came. But the dragon was not dead, just dormant. He set up his show at a crossroads. The ring of gawking people got thicker, everybody on tiptoe. Men and women, noble and peasant, all packed together unconscious of their differences. It was like the resurrection. He began to unwind the thick ropes and remove the cloth coverings he'd wrapped it so well in. Some little movement. The hot Iraqi sun had woken the terrible light. The people nearest started screaming. Panic! The dragon tore easily and hungrily loose, killing many instantly. The snake catcher stood there, frozen. What have I brought out of the mountain? The snake braced against a post and crushed the man and consumed him. The snake is your animal soul. When you bring it into the hot air of your wanting energy, warmed by that and by the prospect of power and wealth, it does massive damage. Leave it in the snow mountains. Don't expect to oppose it with quietness and sweetness and wishing. The nafs don't respond to those, and they can't be killed. It takes a Moses to deal with such a beast, to lead it back and make it lie down in the snow. But there was no Moses then. Hundreds of thousands died. It's useful to mention this word nafs. This word nafs is an Islamic mysticism word that is is a reference to the animal part of our psyche, to the animal part of our soul, which is related to our desires, our passion, and it's a bit what Rumi is portraying here with the snakes that might become dragons and might become completely uncontrollable and do damage both to ourselves and to others. And so he contrasts the hot air of the wanting energy with the coolness of self-discipline, of perhaps even renunciation. People who become renunciates, that forego stuff that is pleasurable to lay people, to everyone, like eating lots of meat or pleasant food. The renunciates just eat lentil soup and modest fare, and sleep on a modest plank of wood or something like that. And if they are not in a pursuit of fame or power or money, but they are also not running away from these things, like for instance Stoics or Buddhists would do. They are neither controlled by these things in their absence or controlled by these things in their presence. And so I think these are the Stoic and Buddhist sage or Sufi mystic could be good fine examples of people who have worked well to keep their snakes within the mountains of their body, sleeping very, very peacefully with the coolness of their self-discipline. Tagging out, feel free to add your 50 cents. And anyone who is not a speaker and would like to chat about these poems after each one is read, please request microphone. This is by no means a monologue kind of space. We actually enjoy having conversations over these things. None of us here know these poems for sure, what exactly is the meaning of them. And as using words from Zara, when we approach texts like these, we kind of wrestle with them because we can only infer what they might mean, just like I was trying to do right now. Okay, the next poem is called The Pickaxe. I was a hidden treasure, and I desired to be known. Tear down this house. 100,000 new houses can be built from the transparent yellow carnelian buried beneath it. And the only way to get to that is to do the work of demolishing and then digging under the foundation. With that value in hand, all new construction will be done without effort. And anyway, sooner or later, this house will fall on its own. The jewel treasure will be uncovered, but it won't be yours then. The buried wealth is your pay for the doing the demolition, the pick and shovel work. If you wait and just let it happen, you'd bite your hand and say, I didn't do as I knew I should have. This is a rented house. You don't own the deed. You have a lease, and you set up a little shop where you barely make a living sewing patches on torn clothing. Yet only a few feet underneath are two veins, pure red and bright gold carnelian. Quick, take the pickaxe and pry the foundation. You've got to quit this seamstress work. What does the patch sewing mean, you ask? Eating and drinking. The heavy cloak of the body is always getting torn. You patch it with food and other restless ego satisfaction. Rip up one board from the shop floor and look into the basement. You'll see two glints in the dirt. So this is a really interesting poem about, at least my interpretation is, it's about human potential, the unlocked human potential. So many people are driving around with a mind and a brain with unlimited potential, and they spend most of their lives thinking that their personality, which is only the external part of their mind, is what they are. They're confusing their identity with something external. Some people even identify with their bodies, which they might embellish with adornments, cosmetics, plastic surgery, and whatnot. But they also might fall ill or even die, and that body just withers and decays with disease and furthermore with death. So for people like mystics and idealists, they kind of warn people in a way to not misidentify yourself either with an arbitrary part of our personality that is ever changing, and it changes either by our own intention, because we become curators of what we consume in terms of information, and people we choose to use as mentors or role models. Or we might just sit passively and consume media and information, like from the internet, entertainment, etc. And whatever these other people with a lot of media production power, they will end up dictating how our personality, how our psyche works. And so if this psyche can become better or worse considering our own self-discipline or vices, then the question arises, well, if there is something permanent about us that is not subject to this impermanence, then it probably is something deeper than this. And we can only try to guess what that might be, what the core of ourselves might be. Try to contemplate in our lives to find it, to find this treasure that is within us. And as Rumi urges, only when we are alive uh, do we have a chance to figure out what is within us, what kind of treasure is this that is within us, and actualize it, actualize our potential. He even goes so far as to explain what he meant with this patch sewing thing. He just blatantly, explicitly says that he's just using it as a visual metaphor for whatever we do to service our bodies, to keep our bodies running. And so many people are either below the level of poverty and they're starving, or many people are just going by. They're just earning enough to keep themselves going, to work more, while a very few people they say enough of this to themselves and start to implement rituals and habits, probably even daily, of figuring themselves out, of self knowledge, and eventually, with patience, they will become, they will transition as if from an ape to something of a god on earth. Uh, since it involves such a high price and so much patience, very few people are willing to do this pickaxe work that Rumi mentioned. Okay, feel free to request microphone, to chip in and give your 50 cents, including you, Zara. Otherwise, it is skipping to the next poem. Okay, let's move forward. The next one is The Rider and the Man Who Swallowed a Snake. A wise man was coming, riding on his horse, while a snake was So guys, feel free to chip in and comment while I prepare the next poem. Okay, so the next poem is called The Hypocrite. So a really interesting poem that mixes outrageous humor, fart humor, with a critique of arrogance, with people who are overestimating their competence, their intellect, or their intelligence. Quite a testament to what we would call uh, the fallacy, where people who are starting in the field, they overestimate their attributes, their skills. So it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The name was escaping me, but faithful Google helped me. And so, yeah, maybe maybe he was aiming at something like that, to show that some people they shouldn't just kind of expose themselves as sages, as masters, when they are not. Another call for humility, for intellectual honesty, in the face of the unknown. And I really like the expression of warning us to not claim to be to say, I am the keeper of the doorway. So kind of like, I am the keeper of the doorway to truth, And since I am the keeper of this doorway, I will dictate what truth is, and so everyone must shut up because I am the owner of truth. And it's a really unsustainable and dangerous state of affairs when a single party in a family or a community or a nation claims to be the exclusive master and the owner of truth. That's that won't go well in the medium long term. Is joining, very welcome. And the next poem is called The Sunrise Ruby.
just getting settled now. Yeah, got a nice cup of tea. Just got home. So I'll begin with all glory to God, consciousness and nature entwined, the Trinity that appears throughout different religious practices, faith, in the sense of Rumi and the mysticism expressed there, a openness to learn and come from a place of not knowing, to be humble to the in-between and that leap of faith into poetry, into something mystic, into learning from brothers and sisters on this endeavor, as the greats crafted these works into mastery and alchemy. It's just that joy of learning and the infinite potential that's in between these texts. And this is something I'm extremely grateful for. I think practicing that gratitude, and as we learn together and we can discuss dualism towards oneness to monism, yet also accepting where everyone is on their own journey of self and spirit and faith and God and poetry. And just for myself as an entity, just this process that is occurring and witnessing that flourishing of the other, that love, that infinite potential of not having to control, not having to know, not having to feed this corruption of a higher God or purpose that is better than something else, something that is perhaps a mistake, yet not a human fault, not to give blame or shame or judgment onto another. That it is these systems in which we may have been entangled. So as this is unraveling, Rumi's writing certainly allows that raveling to take place, I guess, in that space of awe and wonder at the beauty of nature, of love. That there is this rhythm that is present throughout that, in terms of frequency and energy. It allows one to really swim, with the mind and the consciousness, that taking that leap of faith into creation, no matter the task, be it this present moment right now, right? I'll say there's an infinite potential to this present moment. So with this, it's also accepting the death of the last moment and the last self and the last thing that was said. That in analyzing texts, or Rumi or philosophy, it's that dance. It's the dance we entail in, and seeing that spark of, no matter the view expressed, no matter, good or bad judgments, there's the divine in that exchange, in that relationship. So that's a glory to God, and that potential, that consciousness that is within each and every one of us, and every item we see and come across. And that separation can dissolve into water, like through me, like philosophy, and just allowing my breathing and expression to speak from that heart place, that rhythm, that speech that is just going. It's in a flow, yet is open to being proved wrong, because there can be no fixed absolute wrong or absolute right. And I'm just humble and I'm grateful for you, Roger, and I see Zora here as well. I want to wish you both respect and gratitude and the love going forward in your endeavors, and bringing more philosophy and poetry to the people, accessible for all, I hope. And yeah, that's I'll land the plane now, but I look forward to listening and learning, and also to the listeners here. You can speak the loudest words sometimes by just being in that space of quiet and silence, and that's also a very beautiful thing. So thank you all.
Thank you, existentialist. eloquent as usual, and beautiful words, and very inspiring. Thank you, man. Tukshe, go ahead. Your hand is up. Go ahead, man.
Hello, it's
Oh,
Tuche.
okay. Go ahead.
Well, I saw the title, and I wanna just trying to understand one thing. What is Rumi's full name? Is it Mevlana Celaleddin Rumi, or is something else?
Oh, okay. So I'll give you a rundown. So it's complicated. So he's called full name Jalal ad-Din Muhammad Rumi Balkhi, more widely known as Rumi in some countries and as Maulana or Mevlana in others.
Mevlana, yeah.
Yeah, it depends. So different countries know him by different names. But maybe Rumi is the more popular one online, at least as I've seen. In the, for instance, if we see authors who quoted him, like Aldous Huxley in his Perennial Philosophy, he quoted him uh, by saying, let's see,
Well, you know what?
Jalaluddin Rumi.
I've been to his graveyard.
You've been to Konya?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, and there supposedly is an order in which you should go first to the grave of Shams and then Rumi. Is that right? At least that's what Coleman Barks explains in his Essential Rumi.
Well, I was a little kid back then, so I'm not sure if we did such routine, or I don't consider such routine. At least not for my family. But I
Yeah.
have doubts because I never heard such thing before. I was there, and it was very crowded. There were different chapters. It's like a big place.
Mhm.
There is a museum part. There are old Qurans there that was written at different centuries. There were some belongings of the person, like clothes and things like that. There were some tourist guys. They will take people one room to another, and his philosophy, in a way, is pretty much common here. He has a welcoming sayings like, I will tell it, but you wouldn't understand, so I will translate the message. So, like, acceptance of people, regardless of whom they are. Like, you are valuable due to being human, and your existence of human is enough for him to embarrass you, regardless of what you are not compared to him, things like that. And he had like some not 7 advices to people, advices of acting, like keeping a secret. Um, Wait a sec, I'm gonna Google it and I'm gonna translate it to you. You gotta give me some minutes.
Thanks so much. Are you from Turkey?
Yeah,
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, great.
all right. So I will do my best to translate.
Okay.
Be like a river when it is about helping and being generous. This is the first advice. Be like a sun when the topic is compassion and mercy. This is the second. Third, be like a night, cover faults of the others. Um, be like a death to act upon anger. I don't know some, let's say, words in English, so it's not full translation. No. When it comes to being humble, be like solid itself, and be like welcoming, like be. And the final one, which is super famous, be like the way that you are, or like it's like don't pick yourself. Be the way that you are, or the way you look, be you. I couldn't translate it well, but I think you understand it.
Yeah,
Well,
it seems like figuring out how to be authentically yourself, to be thoroughly yourself.
exactly. When
Yeah,
I
that's
was there, when I was at Konya, my family, we went to different sides of the cities, and there are a lot of mosques out there that had different architecture types because they were built at different times. And when you go and check some of the architectures of specific mosques, what happens is that it's like you time travel to back old times because your way of looking is so not modern, you know? It makes itself obvious throughout the architecture. It's old and you're new. It's weird in a good way.
The present is a growth out of the past.
Yeah, well said. The present is a product of the past, and it's always dependently being generated.
Like any city, you can see in any city some aspect of aging, and like maybe closer to the river or the ocean or whatever it is. Maybe it's closer to the railroad line is where it all grew out of.
About be like a river advice. Um, be like a river when it comes to being generous and helping out. That's the advice. But you can find better translations. I'm just doing quick translations here with a little bit of black vocabulary.
Are those words from the Masnavi or some other book from Rumi?
These are 7 advices. The things that I was translating.
Yes, yes.
7 advices of Mevlana or Rumi, with your way of saying it. And
Oh,
they are
okay.
super famous. Everyone knows that. I mean, I guess in Turkey everyone knows that, or because they are popular, and there are like some products in which the 7 advices are printed on, like and things like that.
I heard in a history book that like the Sufis always were around the Silk Road historically, and also when I was researching, the Ottoman, Turk-Ottoman Empire, it seemed like in later states or something, it was like the official religion or something in a type of way. So I'm murky on all of that, but it's more than I knew. Rumi was more than I knew. I think even his descendants were like powerful, like socially or something.
I can't give you a lot of historical background related to that. I think I did hear some stuff, but it has been a while, so whatever I say, it's not permanent or something. But I can tell you that these people have their own way of thinking towards religion, but they also have their own philosophy. And these 7 advices are, let's say, philosophical. Well, it has this philosophy, and these Sufi people, they have their own some like breathing exercises, and while they were performing some religious songs like chorus or things like that, they were using some specific instruments. Like I'm gonna tell you a story. There's an instrument that you breathe it out. It's like sort of flute, but it's not metal. It's like
maybe
sort of wood.
a reed flute. He mentioned reed flutes quite a bit in his poems.
It's called as ney.
Okay.
I'm gonna write you that so you can just If you want to Google it, you can. You can find it at chat. Its voice is so calming, and there are like that voice is combined through some religious songs. And apart from that, some people just play it for joy because it's a good one. It's relaxing one. And just like I said, they have their own breathing system. But when you say that it was official belief of Ottoman, this is something that I'm gonna strongly disagree because this faith, um, Sufi and Sufi way of thinking was recognized, but it wasn't like everyone was into that. Like it
What I
was.
understood, what I remember was that there was like these deviant dervishes, and those guys were the real problem. And like Sufism, I could be wrong. I mean, I guess I could be wrong. It's just I remember they were like there was different brands of Islam, and
Yeah,
at some
exactly.
point, like obviously, but at some point though, I remember them saying like the descendants of Rumi, and that like they had some kind of political power or somewhere. I guess I need to re-listen to that history.
There are different things. Like I cannot talk much about Christianity, but like there are Catholics, there are else people. I couldn't like Puritan, even if they are at the same side, like they are under umbrella of Christianity, but they are different. So I know that Sufi people have their own differences, but I'm not sure what makes them so different than the other um, way of believing, even if under umbrella of Islam. So I'm not gonna make so much comment. But like they were known and recognized, but it wasn't like everyone's official thing. Some people were into that and they were respected, I guess. I mean, like I don't know if they cause any crisis.
Yeah, I think they were pretty tolerated, and it kind of fluctuated. I mean, it reminds me of the Chinese history. Not to get off track, but there were certain points in Chinese history where like Taoism was kind of like the emperor was fond of it or something, and things kind of fluctuated.
I don't know. So I'm gonna leave my so existential can talk.
No, thank you very much, Tushi. Have I pronounced that right? Just to be clear, Tucci. We have spoke before anyway. Just a question really of, on these historical points and learning together. Would you say there's one element or key thing that links this together between the philosophy and your reading and understanding of this? Something that aligns this, if that makes sense? Like a finding from it, if it's that love, if it's something in between these words.
Um, for me to answer first, I need to understand, and I didn't understand.
Okay. So
who served Rumi for a decade, and Rumi revered him highly in his poets. Zarkub was illiterate and uttered some words incorrectly. Rumi used some of these incorrect words in his poems to express his support and humility towards Zarkub. Rumi named him his successor, but Zarkub died soon after him. So Rumi's first successor in the rectorship of the order was Hassam Chalabi, who, sorry for butchering the names, after whose death in 1284, Rumi's younger and only surviving son, Sultan Walid, died 1312, popularly known as author of the mystical Matnawi, Nama, or the Book of Rabab, was installed as Grand Master of the Order. The leadership of the order has been kept within Rumi's family in Konya uninterruptedly since then. The Malawi Sufis, also known as whirling dervishes, believe in performing their dhikr in the form of sama during the time of Rumi, as attested in the Manaqib al-Arfan of Aflaki. His followers gathered for musical and turning practices. According to tradition, Rumi was himself a notable musician who played the rabab, although his favorite instrument was the ney or reed flute. Music accompanying the sama consists of, consists of setting poems from the Matbab Nami and Diwan-e-Kabir, or the Sultan Walid's poems. The Mawlawiya was a well-established Sufi order in the Ottoman Empire, and many of the members of the order served in various official positions of the Caliphate. The center for the Malawi was in Konya. There is also a Malawi monastery, Dargah, in Istanbul near the Galata Tower, in which the Sama is performed and accessible to the public. The Malawi order issues an invitation to people of all backgrounds. During the Ottoman times, the Malawi produced a number of notable poets and musicians. It kind of goes on, but yeah, I guess there's something there, like as it kind of expressed there, that there were some powerful people that came out of that order. That had, yeah. I'll post the link there.
Hello, Terry.
Welcome.
Hello. Are we basically reading quotes and then discussing meaning?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've read half a dozen poems. There's something that I would also like to share that I think will sound interesting for you. It is a passage from Isaac Asimov's Guide to the Bible, where in Samuel 10:10, Isaac Asimov comments thusly. So he goes,
open to everything that happens and accepts everything that happens. So I see what he's talking about there. And it brought to mind all the plastic that's going into the ocean and how somehow it just continues to function. And I find that amazing. But I did want to share a quote.
Please do.
I particularly like the one where Rumi says, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." The wound is the place where the light enters you. And I think that speaks very much to the human condition. I mean, we experience trauma and pain, and somehow that pushes you to go inwards. It pushes you to go inwards. It's a driver. And once you go inward and you start addressing that pain, you find that there's some really deep love and light behind that. But first, you have to go into that wound.
He also said something very similar to that one, which is you must keep breaking your heart before it opens.
Oh yeah, that's another favorite one. I love it. Your heart breaks. It's like, because like we have this as humans in general, I think we have this angst in the core in our heart that is like, it's a pain of the lack of completion. We're seeking that union with the divine, that unity. And instead of going within, most of the time what we do is we go outside of ourselves and we try to buy a car that's going to give us that happiness, or a girlfriend or whatever, or a boyfriend, something exterior, new clothes, new tennis shoes, whatever, material objects or experiences even. And often, usually, those things don't feed that pain, that lack in the center. You have to go inside. You have to go within and go into that, like he said, that wound, that broken heart.
And
Pain.
there are many wise people that say things that reinforce this. People who say that it is from storms that the best pilots prove themselves. The adversity is like a furnace that helps purify our soul into gold. And so many people shirk away in panic from adversity at first sight, and they don't even experience adversity. They kind of in panic want their lives to be perfect. They sweep the adversity under the rug of their lives, and by not experiencing adversity, they end up being ignorant of what they are capable of. Go
Absolutely.
ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Ignition.
yeah, thank you. Greetings to Terry as well. Always a pleasure sending such love and joy your way. Just joy to that. And what is coming to mind is the quote as well about, this material things, and one from Rumi that I recall, I don't know the literal translation, if it was sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. So if you're looking to buy, to gain even cleverness, and this distinction between, the clever and the knowledge and gnosis and something spiritual and mystic, that the more we try to cling to cleverness or the intellect or the ideas of, with respect to these people that have lived, that They're not dead. They're alive now. That was, what was that, Zara?
I coughed. I was just going to ask you, was that a Rumi quote?
Which one?
The move away from cleverness.
Yes.
Very good. That's, if there's anything to sum up what we're trying to figure out with this mysticism, man, Rumi he's not only doing it, but he's talking about it. That's a great quote.
Yeah, man. No, big look, man. Yeah, the cough came in. It was adding it on, but yeah, that the moving away from the cleverness, and even when digging in and deconstructing and doing the deep dive, as we might say, that when the mind catches itself thinking we're doing the deep dive, then there's even that, oh shit, we're moving away from that, and that's, I think, by bewilderment and this sense of awe and God and consciousness, this awe, and I'm going to say that now, that's the energy right now with us. But even that, if it's with respect to Aurelius, that the essence, the spirit of Aurelius is here. You know, that this idea of death and the infinite, and how that is not dead. And the power this can hold, yet of course, if we do ascribe this to a mastery, as in the Greek, that the mastery is, practicing the skills, and maybe the idea of perfection. I was talking about this with a friend the other day. It was Plato and Socrates talking of perfection, but perfection wouldn't be the perfection in I know it all now. It's still practicing the craft. It's just going through the process. The perfection itself, like immaculate conception, like it is, this essence of perfection has got all of these divergences, it's all of these nooks and crannies, because it's when the mind thinks there's that intelligence there, or even, dare I say, when we creep into the comparing with others. I'll do. I say I can do this. We can do this. And it's like it's not there. It's merging the physical, the material, with that spiritual, and just to pause briefly and reflect on that, when people are expressing a lot within psychological and spiritual spaces about, oh well, destroy the ego, yet the ego has been consciously created in this infinite, in the infinite. So thus to try to destroy that which has been created, be it good, bad, or evil, that ego is still there to communicate, rather than trying to, if you try to kill anything, it cannot be killed, as it has been created consciously. Yeah, I'll just leave it there for now.
And I think you're right. Terry.
Absolutely. Gosh. Yeah. And the perfection of this moment, the present moment, which is like eternal and never the same. It's this movement that's happening, and when the mind comes in and tries to like parse it and label it and go, okay, this is the truth, but no, because in the next second, truth is different. It's a moving, changing, eternal, evolving thing that can't be named. You can't pin it down. You can just know it. You can be it. I can't believe that can you please post that quote down in the, whatever that is, the little lozenge or whatever, where the comments are, because I want to know it. I want to copy it. I want to read it over and over again, because it is speaking to a theme that's been really coming forward for me for the last, I don't know, month at least. And I don't know, I just want to see it again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Existential. That was awesome.
My eternal pleasure. Go ahead, Roger. Thank you for being you.
I have a version of that quote that goes, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment, and then goes, cleverness is mere opinion, bewilderment is intuition.
Oh, fascinating. Yes, just posted that and these variations that they bewilder. And again, to add to that, the paradox appears that to be bewildered, to be stupid, right? To bewildered, oh, the clumsy one who's bewildered, and this sense of the childlike play. Oh, the child is too immature to know. You must be toughened by the world and experience. Why? Why? Stop that play. Why stop playing? Eh, Why must experience be something that has to toughen and detract from the infinite potential? Why? What do children say? Why? Never stop saying why, and we'll get there. Why?
Yeah, it's like go ahead and be vulnerable. Be totally open to anything. Be vulnerable. Be accepting, which just goes totally against the mental ego mind, which is all about defending, survival.
It's like when you say Roger, skirting the adversity, you know, and the paradox here is in one moment you're seeing how maybe something that you perceived wasn't so, or maybe it's something you feel is irrational or overdone or something. And the next moment you sort of like got it right. So like it's sort of through seeing a mistake or seeing an error or seeing, you know, so because like the way I look at it is in a big way. Some people love to always be kind of like that outward, or who knows, but they're always maybe pointing at other people and like, or like poking at other people or like looking down on other people. But it's like to be able to have the strength and the ability to like do that with yourself. I think that's where it's at. And so there's a kind of irony that, through embracing, through, not skirting the adversity, through looking at it in another way, there's something that's there. But nobody wishes necessarily for the pain or the adversity or anything like that. At the same time, like it's a virtue to withstand it, as like Seneca says, but it's also preferable not to, to just have like standard virtues. So he kind of separates those, but it's all intertwined and kind of counterintuitive and ironic that going directly into like Rumi's thing with the fire and the water and the river and you know the sun. So going directly into the flame, but it's actually water.
Yeah, I just want to add that point on. It's such a blessing to just be present, and in the presence of what is, and that what comes to mind is, of course, this movement in thinking, even if I call into question the Enlightenment and Descartes, we're enlightened now. I remember that study and the stage I was first coming across that, and those undergraduates going through and like, what? This is absurd. You've not reached a stage now of enlightenment, and how this then can be used to be, well, we're the enlightened mind now. We aren't the savage. We aren't the brutal. Yet that savage and brutal and primitive that they say, the creation there and the access to wisdom and love and respect, that's how this, it's opening the mind to that within the constructs of the universities and the society around that, by going down this path, there will be the pain and suffering that's inevitable. And I do this now consciously, that being even grateful for suffering and pain, saying, look, I'm grateful for that suffering in the world, because without that light, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow, as young in a Jungian sense, that this can be a reason for these sufferings. And of course, when somebody will say to you, does that mean you think it's okay that children suffer? That argument, that's a nonsense. No, it's an acceptance of the pain, such as in disease. Disease is this dis-ease with reality, dis-ease. So when there's that place of acceptance to begin with, be it in philosophy, be it within identity, be it within gender now, a lot of even a philosophical movement pushing back against that. Well, it's irrational. Move to a place of love and see how brothers and sisters are wanting to be in relationship rather than something that is anti-God and faith. And this is something that seems to be transmitting to myself, and it's going around this. Like, you begin with the acceptance, then what may unfold may not be within one's control, yet that is allowing for the infinite and the healing process to begin. So start with the healing process. I remember in the UK here, I'm not really in politics back in the day, but Jeremy Corbyn collaborated back a little while back with him, and he used to always say, why start peace talks without the first thing being end the war as the first proposition to stop the war? To begin on that note, rather than these legislations, begin with these principles of acceptance. Well, you have to begin on that foundation. Thus, you can see that growth, but that is going to come with suffering and sacrifice. I suppose that's the point as well, and being proven wrong and laughing about it like children. Because you look at children and you look at animals in their eyes, and there's a knowing there that cannot be bought by any amount of university or any papers. That is, yeah. That's it for now.
Okay. Wow. Terry, 1 second. We're going to go to you really quickly. We're having some really fun tech issues today, which will be sorted out by next week. If anybody's looking for the first 4 classes, they're recorded in live stream and it's in the jumbo. Roger has to go soon, but this conversation's going so well that when the space ends, I'll open up a second one for us to continue. Roger, do you have 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I want to just really quickly, one, express some appreciation for the contribution. 2, give a couple of quick reflections. If you have a poem you'd like to end us with, Roger, you could look that up real quickly if it's a good one that's pretty fitting for what we've been talking about. Otherwise, I'll find one on there. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I can find one.
Okay, so really quickly while you're doing that, first of all, we said in the beginning of this course that we were going to walk a tightrope between 2 mistakes that we don't want to make. The first one is we're not going to pretend to be mystics ourselves in the sense of gurus. And the other side is we're not going to be so cleverly academic that we're going to deny that there is such a thing. And what we wanted to do, to answer Terry's question more fully, is spend a little time academically looking at mysticism in the context of our philosophy classes and our literature classes, but mostly to read Rumi's poems and sort of run the experiment and say, okay, what happens when we let these poems wash over us? And one of the things I want to appreciate about all the contributions here is that most of them seem to have been made by people who are experiencing that, or at least from their perspective and contributions. It sure sounds like the claim that Rumi is explicitly trying to induce an actual experience within us that sort of sidesteps all of the difficult philosophical work to maybe get to the same conclusions or the other paths that you might get there, that Rumi sort of smacks you in the face with this archetypal reality, is kind of something that might be possible, which is one of the questions we have in our mysticism course, to say, well, is there a category of mythopoetry or of literature that does what it claims to be able to do, which is to not make an argument and not be propositional, like not be clever. That's a really great quote. But instead to psychologically or spiritually or however it's being done, actually just give you a face-to-face encounter with these ultimate cosmic truths. And this has been really a fantastic conversation. Because Roger has to go, what we'll do is the space will end itself when he leaves, even if I'm co-host. So I will open up a new one immediately afterwards, and I won't have everybody's DMs. So just go to my profile and I'll pin it at the top within a few minutes of this space ending. Really quickly, besides appreciating what you're saying, boy, you guys said a lot of really great stuff. One of the things existentialists said reminded me of a quote by Nietzsche. He says, "A man is mature when he lives life with the seriousness of a child at play." And also, it reminded me of this double movement, almost analogous to Kierkegaard's double movement, where it's like, okay, what is this thing you're talking about? Where it's like, okay, experience is hardening you and it's wisening you and it's taking you out of your naivete. And there's this dissatisfaction with the idea that that's all it would ever do. But there's this, I think it's Pinkset, maybe it's just Jung, who had this idea that actually there's a double movement in life. First, you start out as naive, and that is what experience does to you. But the purpose of maturity and age is to get back to that innocent, childlike playfulness in life and an acceptance, like you've been very poetically and beautifully describing. So we'll talk more about that. This is our 5th class on Rumi. You can find in the link there to the YouTube the first 4 if you want to watch any of those. We've mostly just been reading his poems. Next week on Saturday, or I'm sorry, on Wednesday, we're doing them on Wednesdays only now. We're going to discuss a couple of theories about mysticism a little bit, and we're going to do some more Rumi. We're going to stick with Rumi for quite a while before we move on to another mystic poet. So with that last loud burst from me, Roger, do you have a poem ready to close it out? And Terry, would you like to speak before we close this one, or do you want to start us off in our next space? It's all up to you.
I'll wait till the next space because I'm really having fun with this.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say as well to brothers and sisters here, we'll see you over there, and everybody sharing things out and encouraging each other. It's a beautiful thing. So everybody just get together and soak this in. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, thank you all again. This has been really fantastic. Okay, Roger, close us out, and thank you for that. And thank you for curating all of these.
Okay, I'll close with a thirsty fish, especially because Ben mentioned it earlier. So, I don't get tired of you. Don't grow weary of being compassionate toward me. All this thirst equipment must surely be tired of me. The water jar, the water carrier. I have a thirsty fish in me that can never find enough of what it's thirsty for. Show me the way to the ocean. Break these half measures, these small containers. All this fantasy and grief. Let my house be drowned in the wave that rose last night out of the courtyard, hidden in the center of my chest. Joseph fell like the moon into my well. The harvest I expected was washed away, but no matter. A fire has risen above my tombstone head. I don't want learning or dignity or respectability. I want this music and this dawn and the warmth of your cheek against mine. The grief armies assemble, but I'm not going with them. This is how it always is when I finish a poem. A great silence overcomes me, and I wonder why I ever thought to use language.
Thank you, Roger.
Okay, guys and gals, it was really, really enriching to listen from you all and share Rumi with you all, but I have to go. It's late here. So see you guys and see you until next time.
Thank you again for hosting. We'll see you all soon.
Much love.
Big love.
Okay, we're going to be coming back in just a moment. We're going to continue the recording. Okay, I think we can hear that. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure that the tech issues are working and that we can hear the recording in the space. Let me see. Hey, it's working. Fantastic. Okay, good. If you want to go ahead and retweet this so that people can find it more easily, I wasn't really connected with everybody in that room. Let me close out of, well, I'll leave that open. And good, it should be feeding right through. Football. How you doing, brother?
He's good. Sometimes Greg, but yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, buddy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
No worries.
All right. So
I just
Go ahead.
retweeted on like that, so hopefully there'll be. I was on your profile. I think I sent you a heart for some reason, but I was hearting the end of the space, but I must have clicked up on your on your profile because you'd said for the next space. So anyway, I'm going to drop down, buddy. Thank you for everything.
Oh no, that's fine. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Feel free to stay a speaker and contribute.
Okay, yeah, I'm more into the listening. This is not brand new to me, but yeah, I'll be more in the listening side. But yeah, if I have anything to say, I usually say it. Okay, thank you.
Fair enough.
All
Thank
right,
you.
you're welcome. You have a good one.
Hey, existentialist, good to have you here. I'm trying to add you as there we go. Hey Terry, it's so good to see you. We'll add you as speaker here. Hopefully this will work. And it looks like we're back alive again. So just so you guys know that these are parts of courses that we're recording to the website. So the Twitter space here is being live streamed. We're working on some tech issues that'll make that less annoying. But for right now, it's just being live streamed through the live stream. So you'll be recorded into that playlist. We talked about that earlier, but then new people came in.
Yeah, just to say as well, good to see you. From I to the I, we here again. But I'm just going to send this out as well to a few more groups as well, Zara, because it's lovely to see Terry and I in here, and Zara's been starting this off, and just to say to these friends here that this has started a project, and I see it as well personally be to a lot of use to tie in with many of our communities and things. So it's just beautiful to let this all come together and share out. I just there's Veritas as well. So yeah, lots of love, everyone. Hey, brother.
Yes, please do retweet. That's fantastic. And yeah, it's so good to have both of you here. Terry, would you like? I think we'll wait just a minute for a few more people to come in so they don't miss. But you'll kick us off if you're willing to. We just finished the. Okay.
No problem. Go ahead, keep talking. Whatever you were doing.
What I'm doing is being an old man playing with technology, trying to make things work properly. And that's always a fun tightrope show to watch. You can watch me fall. In any case, like we said before, Veritas, we're being live streamed, so it's a part of the recording for the class. This is our 5th class on Rumi. Roger, who's been doing most of the curating and leading of this class, had to go. We had a really good discussion earlier for anybody who wasn't there. And now we're just going to continue it, and it's still a part of the recording, just so everybody knows.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to find your favorite Rumi quote. I'm sure there's plenty of websites out there with Rumi quotes, and something that inspires you, and bring it to the space and share it.
Agreed. So I'm just going to add speaker invites to everybody as they come in, and we'll just wait another 5 minutes or so for everybody to get here.
Yeah, no, sure, and love to all the people here, who guys will learn together and a lot of days together, and that energy, and just to of discussing all things philosophy, consciousness, everything. And it's beautiful to tie this together with the mythical poetic Zara discusses this so well at other times, and learning together and sharing this out. Because in the space in between all of the theories we can discuss, I think this poetry and this soul connection, it can beautifully be done here. So, yeah, and I just wanted to add that quote from the ending, really, as well, of sell your cleverness and buy, what was it? Buy your
Bewilderment. By
Buy
bewilderment.
your bewilderment, yes. So that one. Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. Exactly. So I was bewildered there and even seeing the quote. So let's just be bewildered together and learn together. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. There was something else that you and Terry, at least the two of you, maybe somebody else was suggesting, which was something like looking towards the pain. It's through the cut that the light comes. This is a really interesting idea. A friend of mine just finished his performance as the love interest of Wednesday Addams in the musical The Addams Family, which is a fantastic musical, and you guys should check it out. It's really great. And they have a song there called Move Towards the Darkness, which is an interesting song. But it reminded me of there's so you were talking about this double movement idea of sort of, the temptation to become cynical through the hardening effect of experience when you start out as young and naive, and then the double movement back that allows you to extend a hand in hope and faith and trust, even though you are wizened up, and because you have a vision of faith and goodness and what the world could be. And so in that context, it also reminded me of this idea that we sometimes avoid the things that seem too dark and scary, and we don't want to deal with them. But because we don't want to deal with them, they take over our lives, because they become they fill up all the space of everywhere we refuse to look, right? If you're not looking at the thing, then it's everywhere you can't see. And so it grows into this really large monster, and it just sort of eventually can paralyze you. But the idea is that it's in the darkest place that the gold is hidden. The gold is guarded by the dragon, and it's up a mountain and down in a cave, and you have to basically face the darkness in order to incorporate within your understanding of everything, every aspect of being. And that the hopeful part of that message, of that story that's in the mythopoetic stories and is also in this Rumi mysticism, is that if you do that, there's a hopeful future, because it's not the big monster you think it is. It's a smaller monster, or it's a really terrible monster, but dang it, facing it makes it something that you might be able to deal with. And in any case, there is treasure there. So I thought that was really beautiful, and I was grateful for what you guys added. All right, I'm going to add speaker invites to everybody else, and I think most people are here now. So I'm going to shut up and ask Terry to kick it off with the continuation of our discussion.
Okay. And before I start, I'm just going to say, again, this is a Rumi discussion. So, go to a Rumi website or a Rumi Quotes website and find something that really inspires you, that you want to share and talk about. Okay. Well, I had two comments, hopefully not too long. One was about existential mentioning previously in the other space about someone saying you're already enlightened, and how, that can be confusing. I think saying that is pointing to the fact that you're already in that non-dual state. You're often experiencing those moments of stillness and silence when you go out into nature, or when you're being creative and you don't realize it. But yeah, you're being just like a child in creativity, in that zone, and you're in that silent state, and you're open and receptive. Even at the same time as you're doing something, you're allowing ideas to come through you and to come into your consciousness, and bringing those into reality. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I think we are enlightened. The only thing that's keeping us from realizing that is the mind's insistence on avoiding the present moment. But we often do find moments where that relaxes and we experience it, whether we recognize it or not.
No, I think that's right. It's a very interesting thing because you're talking about how to approach experience and being and the cosmos itself. And what's interesting in our discussion about mysticism is that mysticism is trying to present us with that exact same challenge. And there might also be a key in what you're saying to how to unlock the power of a mystical text. You have to sort of approach it with the same open-heartedness and sort of an attentive ear of expectation and gratitude, possibly in order to be able to experience what it's trying to induce within you. Now, we're not saying that we're committed to that. In other words, I'm not saying for sure mysticism works. I mean, we're going to have conversations about that, but it seems to me that it's always not going to work if you don't approach it properly, and there might be some profound wisdom in there of how to approach even a mystical text in the same way. Existentialism, or Terry, if you want to respond first.
Just real quick, it's the bewilderment, the state of bewilderment. The mind shuts down and goes, what? That's the moment of vulnerability where you can see the stillness.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I think that
And
some of Rumi's
go on,
poems are trying to induce that in almost a hypnotic technique as well. Like the lines, we might want to look at that or when we're reading them and say, okay, are the lines themselves designed to make us sort of think in one direction and then suddenly push us in another to help us get into that state of bewilderment? I think he might be doing that consciously and on purpose. I'm sorry, existentialism. Go ahead.
no, it's fine, it's fine. And even with that, brother and sister, when it was before there, is it Terry or existential? I think with the beings that are present here, there's a respect and an understanding that that need not be the case. So often we find in these spaces, and when we come together, we will carry on the stream of consciousness, no matter which avatar is looking back at each other. We are here, and that's a beautiful thing. And of course, that induces many different fears and this closeness. And even in these times of reading such mastery, such inspiration, there's going to be all fears and panics which are there as well, and saying this is okay, this darkness. And I think one quote that I'd like to read out in this from Rumi, which kind of can exemplify the discussion on the darkness and the light, is one I've come across here. This being human is a guest house. Every morning is a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Treat each guest honorably. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Oh, and yeah, that's the spirit moving there. And it moves the spirit. And I'd say with this as well, Zara, in respect to the said there, if it's intentional or not, to even let go of intentionality in a leap of faith, perhaps in a Kierkegaardian sense, to believe we have one pure intention and coming to a point of there may be multiple intentions and agendas, but that does not matter. It's, yeah, I'll just leave it on that for now.
Yeah, there might be something necessary about that in how to approach it. That's quite interesting and also profound. I don't mean to turn it into analytical talk all the time, but yeah, thank you for that. That's fantastic. Terry.
I think that your role here as the analytical talker is important.
Well, it's funny because we're trying to do both at the same time. And we talked about that in our first, when we started this, in the first class, we talked about how difficult the tightrope walk is going to be. But yeah, we're trying to do both at the same time because One of the mistakes that academics and intellectuals make, and of course this course is on mysticism, but it's in the context of our philosophy curriculum and our literature curriculum, so we're going to see how it relates to other ways of approaching the big questions of being in the humanities. But one of the mistakes that's made a lot, especially in our post-Cartesian scientism attitude of things, is to be snooty and think that, well, if I can't see it under a microscope and we don't have a good theory for it, then there's probably nothing there. So we'll turn up our nose and we'll dismiss the mystics and we'll dismiss the poets and we'll just say, yeah, maybe it's good for entertainment, but it didn't build a rocket ship. And of course, we don't have to go through all of it, but in all of our philosophy classes and the other things we've been talking about, that seems like a completely laughably ridiculous attitude for any serious person to take, especially a philosopher. And so we're going to try to do both. We're going to talk about it. We're not going to say anybody in this class needs to be committed to the idea. We actually have it as questions. Is it possible to write a poem or to hear a poem that can be constructed in a way to induce a mystical direct experience with ultimate being? I mean, that's what Rumi is consciously trying to do. He's explicitly talking about doing it while he's attempting to do it. So we can think he's right, we can think he's wrong, but what we don't want to do is prejudge it and discard it. We want to say, look, if I think it's wrong, I'm at least going to give it the old college try first. I'm going to at least listen, as you guys are talking about, in an appropriate way so that I don't cut myself off from potential wisdom because I'm being the opposite of a philosopher and I'm disregarding it before I even consider it. So yeah, we're trying to do both at the same time. Veritas.
Hey, thanks for hosting the space. I looked at some Rumi quotes, but I wanted to kind of comment on what you were saying too, right? It looked like you were saying, in trying to do this, you have an intellectual way of doing things, and then there's like a mystical way of doing things. And I found on my journey, as my awareness increases, it's interesting because for me, transcending duality was involving both parts, but then getting a third component. And then when you get, so it's not about like leaving behind the duality, but of adding another component so that the three become one. So like an example of that would be like you hear in spirituality, some people talk about a multidimensional awareness, or we're going to the next dimensional understanding of ourselves. It would kind of be like if we had length and width, right? And we only have those two. It feels like length. So if I have a horizontal line and then I have a vertical line, they seem diametrically opposed to one another, like exact inversions. And so for me, when I first started kind of awakening on my spiritual journey, I went from being very earthly to diving into the spiritual as if they were separate and inverted lines from one another. Like there was a horizontal or the vertical. I had to go in one other direction. And what I found is when I add a third component, I don't escape duality, but now that third component makes it one. So you have length, width, and then height. And so now the three of them combine and they create volume. So I think that,
yeah,
sorry, I'll just wrap this thing here. But I think that's like what you're saying is like when we do this, it's about being able to do them all. It's kind of simultaneously have the intellectual, have the spiritual, have the mystical, have the heart, have the thought, and kind of bringing them together as a whole.
I'm smiling. I agree. I think we should be gluttons about all of it. What you're saying there fits in really well with another picture that kept emerging when we were doing our consummate thinkers course by looking at very few specific philosophers, which is this idea of the face of God, or what the ancient Greeks called the arche, the source of all being. And what it seems to have emerged to be, both in Thales and Socrates, Descartes, and in Nietzsche, is basically a yin-yang symbol, as Existential has on his necklace. Is two incompatibles, but the two aren't the only thing. They're chasing each other. So it's almost, they seem like incompatibles, except that there's the third principle, the line between them. It's the love of the chasing of these two opposing things. So if we look at a mythopoetic or a mystical type of trying to approach understanding, first of all, we could say it is a type of thinking. It wants to comprehend, it wants to know the world, but it doesn't want to know it in an objectivist sort of way or in an analytical, philosophical sort of way even. It wants to know it like Adam knew his wife. It wants to know it experientially. It wants to make the type of knowledge that is simultaneously, because it's relational, it's knowledge of the world and knowledge of the self at one and the same time. So, okay, we don't know that that's true, but we do know that that's how it's being framed by many of these people, and that's how I'm framing it when I try to think about it. And so the question then becomes, maybe it's possible to do that. And as you point out, that's not two opposing opposites, it's more like two rails. And if you lean on both the rails, the train has somewhere it can go. I like your analogy of the dimensions. There's definitely this third component, right? It's like there's rail on the left, rail on the right, and then there's the willingness to stand on both of them in order to be able to move forward, something like that. So in any case, what's interesting about that is we can say, okay, if this is the quality of the language, if it's vocabulary, if the vocabulary is narrative, which means it's characterological, it's talking about being in the world like you are a personality and a character moving from A to B with other personalities that can affect your life. Like, I want to understand my place in the world not as a bunch of matter in a specific location, length, breadth, and width, and all of the objectivist fictions that scientists use. I want to use a different vocabulary maybe when I'm in this other space, which is something like, it emerges with all of the mythopoetics, right? What exists in the world? Well, there's nature, there's the community, there's the family, and there's the divine, and then there's you and how you relate to all those things. Well, how do the mythopoetics do that? They talk in narrative. They say, here's Zeus, here's Mars, here's Venus. These are personalities. They're in the world. You better be aware of them, because even if you don't know that they're there, they have their own historical wills. They might possess you from time to time. It would be better for you to know, you know, you're Hamlet, here's Horatio. Get to know the other characters in the play. Okay, fine. So if it's something like that, we can say, okay, I now know how to listen to that vocabulary and maybe extract that wisdom, that knowledge, that thinking about the world that's in there, because I'm not reading it the wrong way. And if like you said before, it's like, okay, we have this scientism attitude where we say, okay, if you're not measuring it in a microscope, if you can't tell me what the experiment says, if you haven't objectified everything and banished all consideration of the things that I have the most evidence for, which is that I'm a personality experiencing things, if you want to banish all of that from consideration, that's a very powerful language, and it can do certain things that this other language can't do, and that's fantastic. But now that I know how to listen to both of those vocabularies, like you say, I can do that third step, which is to rely on both of them. It's like Spinoza said, there's a subjective way of describing all the phenomena of the world, and there's an objective way of describing all the phenomena of the world. And when he said subjective, he didn't mean I feel like this is what's true. He meant this is how the phenomena of the world make an impression on my quality of being, like my actual experience, something that science can't talk about. He said, okay, we can use either language, but again, they're incompatible. They don't translate between each other. Okay, so all of that to say this: it would be as silly to approach a mystical text with the attitude of, I need to find molecules of soul that I can weigh on a scale before I can think in this way. It would be as stupid or silly to try to approach it that way as to say, you know, I was reading Hamlet last night, and I'm pretty sure that the Elsinorian dynasty did not have a prince who uttered the phrase to be or not to be at that time. It's like, you missed the point of the story, right? That's not how you read that type of vocabulary. That's not how it's trying to communicate to you. And so I'm going to shut up now, but I'm going to wrap it up with exactly what you said, which is, okay, put one foot on the left track and one foot on the right track and start chugging away. As long as you know which one you're dealing with, you can listen to it properly, and perhaps there's wisdom and even knowledge there. All right, I'm shutting up. Veritas.
I love what you're saying. You're talking, and it's like triggering all of these connections for me. I really appreciate that. Thank you. You know, it's something you mentioned about like the four. I don't know if you said the four faces of God or the elements of God. There's a really cool thing if you want to take a look at it. So there's in the Gospel of Thomas from the Nag Hammadi. There's I think of it all as just a giant riddle, bunch of riddles. It says Jesus says a couple of things. One of them, he says, if you want to find the kingdom, seek out James the Just. For it is because of him that both heaven and earth came to be, right? And if you just Google James the Just and look at images, you'll see a bunch of images of this guy throwing up hand symbols. But if you look at his frock or whatever his outfit is called, you'll notice that there are two designs. On one side, there'll be a cross, and on the other side, there's an X, right? There's another quote that was in Gospel of Thomas, and I'll tie these together in a second, where Jesus said, "For he who knows of the 5 trees that are eternal, that don't shed their leaves in the summer nor in the fall, they'll more or less they'll reach the kingdom." He also said another one. He said, "In a house of 5, 3 will rise up against 2, 2 will rise up against 3, and they will rise as a solitary one." And where am I getting at with this? Another thing we can look at is if we look at a lot of the ancient symbols, right? You have the Iron Cross, you even have what some people call the Nazi symbol, and all of those things. You'll notice that more or less they all have a cross. And in each of the corners, though, there's spaciousness, right? With the Iron Cross at those 45-degree angles, almost as if you were to draw an X through those lines, you'll find that spaciousness. And I was meditating a few years ago, and I get these images that pop in my head, and there's this drawing that I draw. But anyways, what it showed me, and it's where I'm at now, was ultimately that when he said, seek out James the Just, he's talking about those symbols. And to me, the cross equals the physical realm, and the X equals the 4 corners. And there's something, you talked about the 4 faces of God. Another thing, if anybody wanted to Google in here, it's called the tetramorph. It's called the 4 elements of God, or the 4 faces of God. And in each one of those corners where that X would go through, there's in one corner, there's a bull. In one corner, there's a lion. In another corner, there's a man. In another corner, there's an eagle or an angel. And to me, what this is, and this actually can relate to some of the things from the Vitruvian Man. It shows a man in the shape of a cross. That's the physical man. His limbs are touching a box. That's this kind of finite reality. And then his other part of his body is in the shape of an X, and he's reaching out to the infinite circle. And to me, those 4 faces are 4 elements of God. The bull represents the unconscious. The subconscious is represented by the lion. The man represents the conscious, and then the super conscious is represented by the eagle. And you could actually tie those into the 4 elements as well. The bull would be earth, the lion would be fire, the man would be water, the eagle would be air. But what's really cool is in the center is Christ, and right, and Christ referred to himself as I am. I am the life, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the alpha, I am the omega, I am the beginning and the end. And to me, to get to that next level of multi-dimensional awareness of ourselves, we have to identify all aspects of those beings. And I think because we have so much separation and divide between the physical and the spiritual, and even within the spiritual comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means breath, which to me just basically represents the invisible thing that actually all life is driven from. We can't see it, we can't necessarily touch it, but we're all driven by it. And I think that when we can make those 5 aspects of self all align and realize that the body and the spirit are one, that the 5 consciousnesses are one, and we realize that at the center of them all, at the heart, is the I am. And I think when we do that, it's really cool. There's some drawings I've done on it, but actually there's a thing about it, but when you do the math of the breakdown, it's actually 3 circles in columns. So it's 3, 6, 9. Each one of them represents an aspect of self. And then where the X goes through, you get another 4, and it actually equals 13, which is, Jesus and his 12 apostles, King Arthur and his 12 knights, the 13th god that was born from the Titans that represented change and transformation. But anyways, I've been rambling a little bit.
No, if you'd be willing, that's great. If you'd be willing to DM me, we need to do a numerology class at some point. Maybe you can help us put some structure to that. Terry, would you like to take it away?
I don't know if I'm going to take it away, but
I'm going to give it to you then. We're going to force you to have it. No, okay.
Okay.
Well, pick it up if you want to.
I just wanted to come to what you were saying. I was thinking of a poem that Rumi talked of, where he's addressing, I think you were talking about being overly clever. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. And he, like you said, he takes it in one direction and then flips the table on you, and he tries to get you to let go of the intellectualism and the thinkingism, and
Yeah.
find that space of
It
beingness.
it leaves you a little bewildered too, and he doesn't overly spell it out. It's a little bit like a Christ-like parable or something. That was fantastic. You see, that's why we leave the present at your doorstep and run away, so that you have to pick it up whether you want to run with it or not. I'm sorry. Go ahead and continue, and then we'll go to existential.
Well, I'm going to read another one then, because there was a beautiful one that I just saw. If I can find it, give me a second. It was really beautiful, and it reminded me a little bit of another mystic. Where is it? Why don't you go to existential, and I will find this.
Fantastic.
Yeah, sure. Take all the time. We're here now together, everyone. Like that poem, it'll come at the right time, as we know in the infinite, as everything's aligning now. What has been described, it's everything in its right time. This leap of faith, and having this leap of faith amongst all the chaos in the universe, right, and the strength that takes, and that sacrifice of handing it over, be it as well in this intellectual scene and spiritual, where the situations and structures that have tried to confine the mind and spirituality into doctrines, into ideologies, into patterns, and anything spiritual being discredited as craziness. Thank God for craziness and divergence. I just want to say this, and how these confines are breaking through in terms of identity. So what I am sensing, this is more and more, if we observe this, towards, if it's mental illness, mental health, or I talk about autism or divergence, that it's an invitation to relationship that everyone is going through, that it isn't this defect or culture war, it's the breaking apart of this material lens and landscape of the mind. The mind is collapsing and diverging, which is painful, which is scary, but it's also, it's very prophetic what's happening. And I just wanted to add on it about, that with the with the spiritual, with philosophy, it's leaving those breadcrumbs, just like Hansel and Gretel. That's why Hansel and Gretel, always going back to that tale, it's the breadcrumbs into the forest. But we don't know what's going to be in the forest. And I guess that's why surrounding yourself with brothers and sisters you're expressing good faith, then there is element of that there. It's a beautiful thing. And I wanted to mention there, Veritas, of course, closing on the 5 dimensions. We've just got a class 005 here. So let's just leave that to rest there.
Really quickly, we're meeting for this mysticism class. We're going through Rumi right now. In the jumbo, you can find the link to our first 4 classes. I see a lot of new faces here. Terry, would you please pick up the mic?
Sure. And also, I just want to remind people, if they want to come up and share a Rumi poem that inspires them or that they love, please, don't be shy. We'd love to hear your voice. Okay, so I found the poem. It says, knock and he'll open the door. Vanish and he'll make you shine like the sun. Fall and he'll raise you to the heavens. Become nothing and he'll turn you into everything.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think in last class we talked about Rumi's ability to dance between, while he's doing his mysticism, to dance between different religious traditions and different philosophical traditions sort of effortlessly. I mean, there's a lot of Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity. I mean, if you think about Christ's parable of the first shall be last, that's clearly
exactly. I thought it very much reminded me of Jesus, who is another mystic.
Yes, absolutely. So the fact that Rumi can, it's really funny because we've done all of this philosophy in our other courses, and it's really cool to see Rumi primarily as this mystic, because that's what he is, and yet how easily he can just, while he's whirling and dervishing around, step right into the realm of the philosophical and blast things apart with a half a line of his poem, and then with the next step land himself in the middle of a theological debate and blast that apart. And it's really quite a wonderful thing to see. It's pretty impressive. Terry, and then we'll go to Safina. Also, I'm looking at some of the new faces here, and Jana's quote is a pretty good quote in her profile there that I like a lot. So Terry, go ahead, and then we'll read that quote later.
Okay. Real quick, I just wanted to say that perhaps what you're noticing you're seeing all these different traditions in Rumi is that when you look at any mystic, all mystics are talking about the same experience. So they're bound to.
That's right.
They're bound to point out similar aspects. So go ahead, Safina.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. This is my first time joining your class. But I've been, I've indulged in Rumi's poetry, like especially last year. Since the pandemic began, it was really helping me with dealing with my own, how that it was in a way that's it was helping me to deal with that crisis that we were all dealing with. Personally, the last quote that Terry read, I feel like not just that there are many quotes that I feel there is a parallel between Nietzsche and Rumi and some of their quotes. So that one it sounded similar to From Chaos to Order that Nietzsche has written about, and I perhaps that's the reason I'm drawn to both of them, both Nietzsche and Rumi. They have spoken to me in many occasions. And the other quote about looking into yourself instead of trying to change the world, that has I have it has spoken to me in many occasions in my life. Sometimes life does throw curveballs, and there are circumstances happening around us globally, and we are always surrounded by so much information and all that we cannot help but get wrapped, like if we like in the age of social media, if we don't stop ourselves, we just get so wrapped into what's happening around us and globally that we cannot stop and look into ourselves and to see to find beauty and wisdom in the smaller things in our life instead of looking into other things. So for example, it was my my country of origin went into a complete chaotic situation 2 years ago. But after reading Rumi's poetry for a while, and as well as some other philosophers' works like Kierkegaard and others, I found peace for myself, and through looking internally instead of focusing on what's going on, and focusing on things that I have no control on. I realized that essentially I found peace in thinking that the world is a circle. There's everything runs in balance. So what goes around comes back around. What happens, there is every action has reaction, so everything balances itself. Whether I do anything or not, eventually the world balances itself. So that's what I got at that time.
That's fantastic. Wow. So I want to underline and emphasize something that you said. So a moment ago, we were talking about the conversation that can happen between the mystical and the philosophical, propositional, analytical, different vocabularies. However, what you say is 100% true. Nietzsche was explicitly, consciously, and obviously melding, synthesizing the mythopoetic and the mystical text with his philosophy. He was doing both at the same time. And when we did our Consummate Thinkers course, which we're going to do again, so was Socrates and so was Descartes. They were explicitly trying to do something mystical and powerful that would induce an immediate experience between the interlocutor who's engaging in philosophy with them with this mythopoetic, pre-philosophical way of understanding the world. Nietzsche does that quite profoundly. His answer to nihilism, which is what his mission to triumph over nihilism that he saw coming, and I think there's more countries on the brink of going into utter chaos. And so if you're not there yet, you might be joining Safina sooner. I mean, hopefully not, and hopefully we can turn this all around. But in any case, he predicted all of that. He prophesied. He talked about the next 2,000 years. He talked about the next 200 years. And he wasn't joking when he did those things. But more than that, his answer to nihilism was characterological. It wasn't propositional. His answer was Zarathustra. It was a character, and how that character interacts with the rest of the world is the only real way to understand Zarathustra. When Socrates said on his deathbed, he said, we've been doing philosophy. He said this to his students. I'm going to paraphrase. He said, we've been doing philosophy. It's been great. We've been sharpening our arguments and sophisticating our propositional understandings and getting closer to a propositional kind of truth. And we've been doing all of that only within ethics, because that's the only subject I think is worth doing. But I've got a surprise for you. We've been doing something else the entire time. He pulled away the veil before he drank the cup. And he said, what we've been doing, my friends, is trying to get closer to the source of all truth, beauty, justice, goodness, and love, not to understand it propositionally, but to relate directly with it so that it might change who we are and that we might be able to experience bits of love and truth and justice in our relationships to other things. So when he's making that speech, he's explicitly describing that mythopoetic way of understanding the world that we were talking about earlier, of relationally understanding it. Descartes, when he's doing his meditations, he has plenty of arguments, and it's all philosophical. And obviously, we love philosophy, and we're studying it a great deal. But there's 2 paragraphs at the end of his 3rd meditation that make no sense, I think, unless you understand the entire purpose of the book differently than just that. He says, now that we've cleared away all of our wrong ideas about the divine, let's just sit here for a moment and bask in the wonder of our ability to relate directly to this thing. So he's doing a mystical text. So while we're talking about mysticism here through Rumi and his poetry, we're going to stick to Rumi for quite some time, I think, but we're eventually going to look at other primarily mystical authors. But to understand what mysticism is, we can understand that it doesn't just exist in poetry or in prose. It exists possibly in experiential naturalism of just meditating and climbing a mountain and looking at a sunset. People talk about getting there that way. There's some people who use psychedelic immediatism, which I do not use, and I'm very cautious about. I think it's a pretty worrying path. But in any case, some people describe that gets them to that direct experience. But also in philosophy, there are a few. This is why we called them the consummate thinkers in our course, because they united. One of the reasons we called them that is that they synthesized, they brought together, they made love with between the 2 opposites, the masculine and the feminine. These 2 different principles came together into one, where they united mysticism with philosophy at the same time. So anyway, Nietzsche is fantastic, and we're going to do our 3rd year course on Nietzsche, and we're going to go through Zarathustra again. I wish Elena was here, because she pointed out the other thing about Nietzsche that I wanted to mention from what you said, which is she was really, when we went through Zarathustra the last time in our Consummate Thinkers course, she really picked up on these 3 passages in that story where It's called The Night Song. Let's see if I can remember the titles. The Night Song, The Grave Song, and The Dance Song. Okay, it goes Night Song, Dance Song, Grave Song, I believe. Wait, did I lose track? Veritas, you stopped being a speaker. In any case, you were talking earlier about the yin, the yang, and then the line between them. This trinity that exists in sort of the base of all being. This yin yang symbol that keeps emerging with those philosophers and with Rumi as a poet. And in those three songs, what Zarathustra's doing is describing being from the perspective of the material world, affirming in potentiality, trying to jump up to this kind of being that it doesn't really have, this eternal being. And then he describes the entirety of the cosmos from the opposite perspective, from the divine eternal perspective, eternally being perspective. So he gives us the yin, the cosmos from the perspective of the yin, and the cosmos from the perspective of the yang. And in the middle, he does the dance, which is just right in between it, and the interactions between these two opposites. All of that to say, there's a very beautiful quote where he describes what he's able to do in that book that maybe no other thinker was able to do, at least in a philosophical context, which is, he says, "You look up because you long for elevation. I look down because I am elevated," which you could read that in a very sort of basic, arrogant sort of a way, but that's not what it means. I mean, if you take it really seriously, what he's saying is, I can describe the love of God for the material world just as much as, it's like all of the Christian theologians told us, we look up to God and we beg him for mercy, and it's his grace that is mercifully given to us. And Nietzsche's like, yeah, okay, fine, that's half the story. But did you know that God is so overfull that from his perspective, our acceptance of his mercy, of his grace, is a mercy to him, right? Which, again, we won't have to dive into that any deeper, but it's a heck of a thing to try to talk from both of those perspectives and ride both those rails at the same time. So anyway, I didn't mean to go off on too much of a tangent, but I 100% agree with you that Nietzsche and a few other philosophers were doing mysticism at the same time as they were doing philosophy. I think that's the only right way to read them. All right, I hope I didn't get us off track too much. Does anybody else have a Rumi quote? We had a quote. When you speak, you are only repeating what you already know. Okay. But if you listen, you might learn something new. So I'm going to stop speaking things I already maybe quote unquote know and start listening. But that's the quote from Jenna's profile, which I liked. Existential. Take it away.
Yeah, Zara, brother, you are here on the path. No matter the quote, this is what's in consciousness now. You're here, we're meant to be, and that's absolutely okay. No matter the quote, no matter anything else, that listening and sharing what's going on here, that's something I just want to express gratitude for, and love and acceptance. Yes, and from this place, no matter what quote comes across, that's
grateful
just
to be here, and
great.
I'm
It's
grateful
gratitude.
you're here.
And gratitude, not just as this platitude, and just being, and what can be unearthed. And I see, Janice. Yes, Jana is thankfully here. Lots of love.
It's a pretty fun thing we're all privileged to engage with. It's nice dancing on these topics with you. Jenna, go ahead, and then we'll go to Jade.
I feel like I'm not very qualified to speak in great deal. English is my second language, and these concepts of language in terms of mysticism and a poem and all the above, maybe I need to read a little bit more about it. But the particular quote that you read was from the Dalai Lama, and I do write most of my material. However, that one, and I usually accredit it too, but I believe the accreditation was cut off on that one. There's one that I wrote that I really, really like, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to put it in the nest. And I just feel that it might have value here. If you value the famous philosophers of the past, please recognize this. They were nothing more than normal people in their time, privileged to be recognized, many only after their death, others overlooked to be forgotten forever throughout time. So learn to recognize the potential of the normal people who cross our path. If you can overlook the flaws of the famous ones from the past, why not the ones living today? Today is for the living, and that is us, the normal people, the normal everyday people who keep pushing through to make life happen.
I like that. That's really good. I like how it focuses on the present, but also to make life happen is for the promise of a future. That's fantastic. Jade, go ahead, and then we'll go back.
Oh, I was sitting there just
I'm
listening to
sorry.
what Jana had to say. No, it's
I'm
all
sorry
good.
to interrupt. I have to step away from the space, so please excuse me.
No, okay, all right. Go ahead. If we see
I'm
you later,
sorry.
that's great. If not, go have a blessed evening. We'll talk
Thank
to you later.
you. I wish I could have stayed longer. It's so good. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for keeping us going.
And thank you, everybody in the space. Please forgive me, Jade, for the interruption.
It's okay. I just came up on this space out of nowhere. I was just scrolling through Twitter and I was like, well, what's this? Okay, but
Glad to have
I
you.
was I was just ear hustling on what someone was talking about. I'm one of those people that was catastrophizing, how you say that, about everything in life, and then realized that recently when I started just letting things go and just getting up and being grateful every single day, things started just being given to me. And I was just like, I started to for me, my family more so grew up in a lot of African spirituality. So I do believe in keeping my ancestors' spirit alive. And I do give them offerings, things of that sort. But I still was holding on to a lot of my past. And I still was holding on to a lot of hurt and pain and things. And I wouldn't let it go. I was holding to a lot of resentment. And then recently, like I'll say about 4 or 5 months ago, and I started letting, my past go and just living in the present. And I didn't realize how beautiful life was when I started living in the present. And then also another thing that was going on is I was judging people a lot. When I say that I judge people, so I didn't realize how much I judge people until I was at work and I was really judging all my coworkers without realizing it. And it's this young coworker where everybody was judging her because it was like, oh, why she talk like that? Or she act this way, she act that way. I sat down and talked to her and she was the sweetest baby. Like, I just want to baby her. I just want to hold her. I can tell. It's like, oh, you blame the mother, but like talking about her mother, like her mother didn't raise her right. But once I get just showing her love, she just like started following me like a little baby, like a little, like a little sibling or something. And I'm sorry, y'all, if I'm rambling. I'm sorry if I'm rambling.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
But she started following me around, and I was like, "Why is she?" I was like, "Why is she following me?" And then I started realizing, like, "Oh, does she like look up to me? Like, she literally would come to, like, she has a trainer she can go to while we're at work. I work in the medical field. She has somebody who trains her. She can go to, but she literally just started following me all the time, asking me questions. She said, "You have a trainer." I said, "You better go to her and ask her. I can help you, but it's gonna be a different way. Cause, sometimes at work, the easy way." But she. And I didn't realize that, and I told my mom about it, and I couldn't figure out why this girl was so connected to me because I don't even know. I never had that happen to me before. And I started realizing, like, oh my gosh, when you start letting go and going in, well, for me, when I let go and went into another chapter in my life, I realized that people start just being gravitated to just like figuring out how did you get there, or just spiritually trying to figure out how are you the way you are right now? How can I get there? So, and I just thought it was so beautiful when I went home.
Sorry, I didn't mean to mute you, Jade. Somebody came off mute by accident. Go unmute yourself and continue, please.
No, if somebody wants to talk, I'm sorry, I've been rambling.
You're doing fine.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I know this is not as like, I know you guys was talking about poetry and things of that sort. I'm new to this, so I'm just talking. But yeah, and I just thought that was so beautiful because that's how you're growing as an individual. The old me would have been like got mad or went to the trainer, like, you need to get her, she's following me everywhere. But I just like started showing her stuff in the easy way how to do things, and just talking to her and learning that she has a baby, and she's a baby herself. She's literally just turned 18. So I was just like talking to her and just, so like, you're fine, like you're good, girl. You already in your career. You 18, like, just giving her so much like love and advice and stuff like that, and just talking to her. And I just realized like recently I just stopped judging people. I just literally, I don't judge others. And now I look at past relationships where we both were just judging each other. And then, and recently with my ex, I was so mad and had a lot of resentment because he lied about a lot of different things, about how many children he had, blah, 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 that. And I had so much resentment. And I started realizing when people lie to you, it's because of their own shame and not because of you. And then like when you talk to them, tell them like, that's a manipulation tactic and you were ashamed about something, but I let it go because I'm like, that's his path and that's not mine. So I'm not attaching myself to that path. But yeah, I'm sorry, y'all.
That's powerful. No, that's powerful. Thanks. That's a major shift when it comes to gratitude. I'm going to think more about trying to be grateful, because I think that gratitude attitude really shifts a lot and can take us. I think sometimes we're critical. We're so hypercritical because we're broken inside, and we know there's something that needs to be fixed within us, and so we're rabidly concerned with what's wrong with everybody else around us. And anyway, Bobby, Bobby, would you please go ahead?
Bobby, did you say that jokingly?
No, I'm trying to read. I thought it was Bobby, or it's Bobi. So you tell us how.
It is. I'm laughing because any of my friends who use Siri to call me, it says calling Bobby. So it's an inside joke with all my friends. It's actually Bobby.
Okay, that's funny.
Oh, I love it. Okay, yeah, there's some funniness. Yeah, Jade, thank you so much for sharing that story, because like Zara was saying, it really is a nice reminder that we need to be mindful, and we get caught up in our day-to-day lives, as spiritual and as awakened as we are. It's a nice reminder. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I went and found a Rumi quote that is speaking to me in this now, and it is: respond to every call that excites your spirits. And that speaks to me right now, because what I'm seeing, especially in spaces, is this absolute thirst. Everybody's so thirsty for not just learning things, but how do I implement them? Where's the tools? I want to start putting this in action. And that quote is like that little fire, and on top of putting things into action, it's all of us going internally and really listening to what is our passion. Where are we really being called in our path, and to serve humanity and to serve the greater good? So there's a lot of layers to that quote, and yet at the same time, it's so simple, right? And so that's what I wanted to throw out there. I just yeah, I love it.
No,
and thank you for this space.
No, thank you for contributing, and thank you for being here. So we mentioned that there's a lot of new faces, and this is great. We mentioned that in the Jumbo you can find the first 4 classes. We also mentioned that we're going to talk about mysticism. However, what we didn't mention is that in some upcoming classes are going to be some really exciting experiments that we're going to run with reading Rumi's poems. So most of what we've done so far is we've read his poems, and sometimes we've talked a bit about them, but we mostly just ran that experiment of just sort of meditating on them and letting them wash over us. However, that quote that you shared reminded me of some of what Rumi talked about when he was describing what it was like for him to be the vessel that was having poured into it these words. Like he would spin and the words would sort of come to him, and he would shout them out as they came to him, or sing them out as they came to him. And that's sort of how he was composing many of his poems. So he didn't write them ahead of time. And he talks about how he gets to the end of this sort of spiritual experience that's happening with him as he's trying to channel this path, this method for achieving some kind of transcendence. And he says, I finally I sigh and I come quiet and I end and I think to myself, why did I ever look to words in the first place, right? So he's trying to describe something that you can't describe. And we talked about C.S. Lewis's idea of there's a beam of light coming through a barn door, and you can describe it, you can analyze it, you can measure its length, breadth, and width, and you can talk all about that beam of light, or you can do all of that or not do all of that, but also tilt your head and bend it over so that the light hits you right in the eye, right? That's a different way of looking along the light instead of at the light. And with mysticism, that's what the author is attempting to do. Is he's not trying to talk about the universe, although he will sometimes talk about being and the nature of being, but he's trying to give you the experience through the rhyme, through the meter, through the hypnotic. I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, but through the design of the concepts and the way they're laid out, to bring you to a place of bewilderment and then experience of the sort of the pattern of being that is at the base of everything. So when you read that quote, it reminded me a little bit about his. Can you read it again for us real quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Respond to every call that
Right.
excites your spirits.
Okay, so I don't know if this is accurate, but while he's doing this whole thing with his work, he's also talking about what he's trying to get you to experience sometimes. Sometimes he's just talking about the poetry of beautiful things, and those images are designed to help induce the experience. But sometimes he's talking about how it is that he's doing what he's doing while he's doing it. And it occurred to me that he might, from his perspective, be responding to the things that are exciting him and popping into his mind, almost like it seems like as he goes through his daily life, there's this story we talked about where he just, like Socrates, who stopped in the middle of the road and just stood there for hours thinking through an argument philosophically. Rumi stopped walking in the marketplace once because he heard, I think it was the blacksmiths hammering, and the beat of the rhythm of what was happening there was speaking to him. And so he started getting into that trance by tapping into the patterns of being, even as they're expressed in conscious, sophisticated human structure through the act of hammering metal. So it seems, as we learn about him, to me at least, that he's maybe going through life and parts of being are bright and they're shining and they're shouting out at him, and they're just sort of getting stuck in his head. And then when he's in this trance, they come back to his mind sort of unbidden. It's like he's responding to that which excites him. Well, if it's exciting him, it's coming from outside him, right? One of the differences between mysticism, not only for what it's trying to do for us as we experience it and read it, but also for the creation of it, is that it's not originating in the author, right? A philosopher or a scientist, even worse, a scientist can sit there and say, if he's a good scientist, and a very rare one, because 99.999% can't do this, but if he's a really good scientist, he has internalized the principles that allow science to work. He has a method and he brings it with him, and he approaches the world, utilizing that method, and then trying to, make hypotheses and design experiments to test them, right? He's sort of, as a singular character, bringing what he needs to bring to do the scientific thing. That's not the case, it seems, with the prophets and with the mystics and with the mythopoetic writers, the writers of great scriptural texts. It's more like they're a channel. So when he says respond to what excites you, it seems like you said, it's true on many layers all at the same time. So I don't think this is all it's saying, but I think it's also a hint of the idea of how he goes through life and does his prophetic or mystical work, where it's like, okay, I'm not bringing the excitation here. I'm not putting in the argument and constructing something. The tickling feathers are coming from outside me, and I'm responding to them. That's why I'm dancing. That's why I'm singing the lines I'm singing. So in any case, I'm not a mystic, so I don't know what it's like to be to tap into the muses. But what I can do is try my best to badly describe or try to extract some sort of propositional understanding of what it is they're talking about. And I think he's describing that amongst other things. And anyway, it's a hell of a beautiful picture to me. Existential, please.
No, thank you so much, Zara. Zara. We all have these pronunciations. And Bobby, I like that. We're gonna call Bobby Bobby from now on. We can switch it all up. That is beautiful.
Only in love. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
only in love, and you are loved. I am loved. We are loved, like you are, and none of this suffering has been in vain. You know, just listening to the breathing there, that it may sometimes seem that you know, these crosses we've had to bear, the ones that we've had to carry, it's not in vain, brothers and sisters. And just there, I'm going to be leaving soon. I see there again, you know, these discussions we're having, you know, when you realize and you think these spheres of influences, but when we talk of the fifth dimension, you know, the philosophical conscious going towards Rumi and the stars aligning, it's beautiful, yet it is chaotic. And I think that dizziness, I think what's come to mind to say to everyone here is, you know, that chaos does happen more and more, yet being reminded of the presence of each other when all of this seems uncontrollable around us, that can be grounding and humbling, you know, and if it's around mystics, philosophers, whoever else. And I'd just like to leave with this quote of Rumi in light of this, that, and this is to everyone, right? Do you know what you are? You are a manuscript of a divine letter. You are a mirror reflecting a noble face. This universe is not outside of you. Look inside yourself. Everything that you want, you are already that. God bless.
God bless. Thank you. We're actually going to wrap it up soon. If anybody else has a poem or a line from Rumi, I was going to ask if anybody has something that they want to read. What I should have finished saying earlier is that we're going to do some musical experiments when we read Rumi in the near future, including dancing in a circle, memorizing, and trying to use inspiration to very badly approximate something like the way they were originally delivered. We're just going to do these experiments as one-offs, just for the fun of it. And we also have some musical instruments, and we might try to accompany that, the straightforward reading, with some music. So we're going to do some fun experiments with that in the near future. If anybody here has a piece of Rumi that they're burning to share, that they think would be a great way to end the space, I'm going to shut up. We're going to let whoever it is that volunteers to share something from Rumi that they want to, and then I'm just going to end this space. Jade, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I'm a little late to the party. Did you say we was gonna do a naked fairy dance?
No, a whirling dervish dance. So when
I'm so
Rumi,
sorry.
no, you're fine. You're fine. I don't think.
That sounds very interesting. Maybe in a wilderness.
Well, no, you've got me worried now. Maybe I performed what some people call a Freudian slit, or a Freudian tit, or something like that. I don't know. No, what Rumi did was he the whirling dervish comes from the fact that these poems were delivered in a sometimes impromptu manner by the mystic, the one tapped into the muse who was channeling them, but he would usually spin in a circle and shout out the poem when the inspiration came for each line. And so we're going to do some different experiments,
So like
and they
a
might.
manifestation?
Yeah, well, that's what he's doing, right? He's trying to manifest.
A spell?
What's
We're
that?
not gonna call it that, but a spell, a manifestation.
I would say it's like when Ovid starts the Metamorphoses, he invokes the muse and he asks the gods to speak through him. And when Homer is going to give us his historical story or his mythopoetic story, his epic tale, he invokes the muse, Milton and Dante. So there's this idea of divine inspiration in the mythopoetic and mystic texts that they say, look, I'm not really the author of this. I'm a vessel through which it's being channeled. And Rumi is consciously and explicitly saying, yes, I'm in that group. These poems aren't coming from my philosophical thoughts. They're not coming because I'm a very clever crafter of poetry. I'm going to wait for the inspiration to come. I'm going to spin in a circle.
I love that.
And When the lines come to me, I'm going to shout them out. And that's where we got all of these texts. In fact, there's so many Rumi poems. Roger, who usually leads this class and led it earlier before he had to go, was telling us a story that in the cultures that value Rumi's poetry, there's so many, I think tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of lines of Rumi poetry that have been recorded, that the young children play a really cool language game with their parents, which is in the evening, the father might say a line from one of Rumi's poems, and whatever word ends that line, the child has to say another line from another one of Rumi's poems that begins with that word. And apparently you can play this for many, many, many hours. And language games are a great thing for adults and children to do, because adults should be interested in language and they benefit from being interested in it, and children can't help themselves from being interested in it. So
I'm
and
just
it,
gonna have to. I'm very new to this space, and I'm very new to Rumi, so I'm gonna be looking Rumi up because I don't know. I'm sorry.
no, fantastic. So there's a lot of new people here. So again, if you go to the Jumbo, in the first link is the YouTube channel where we're recording this class right now, and where we're recording all of our classes. Most of them are not done on Spaces, but next week we'll have all the technological issues worked out to do both the live stream and the Spaces, because in the live stream we share pictures and slideshows and all sorts of things while we're discussing Rumi. But this is one course of many courses that we're going to be doing. But this course is a mysticism course. And so we're mostly going to be focused only on Rumi for quite some time, actually. But we're also going to discuss mysticism. And we're going to, you know, it's a mysticism class. We'll have lots to say from lots of different perspectives.
I
So
love that. Okay.
if you want to join us in the live stream, that'd be great. If you want to join us here on Twitter, we're going to be doing this one in both places. So I think that's all we need to say. iFoot.
Hello, my good people. I've been doing some carpentry work and listening to you guys and listening to all the poems, but you did ask for one, and the only one that's been sticking in my head of recent, and I don't know it all, I just know one line of it, is that you are not a drop in the ocean, you are an ocean in that drop. And another guy who was I think he broadened it out, Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he had another, you know, he had been reading Rumi and got, you know, really into his work and a lot of the other sages and poets of this world. And he said, you come from the ocean, you are the ocean, but when you come here, all you are is a glass that dipped itself into that ocean, and you are full of that ocean. So it's something very similar, different words, same meaning. And when Rumi gets into those states, he's connected automatically to where we're coming from, the source energy, God, whatever you want to call it. And he gets into that mode or meditative mode, and he connects. And that's why he's so much good work. It's coming directly from source energy. The same way a tree, or if you take beauty in flowers and other things, there's a lot of it out there. Just open your eyes. God's everywhere. And I think that's what he's trying to say also as well too. But he does it so eloquently with some of his poems. So it makes you think, you know, what's he saying now? There's a
100.
reading in between the lines of his poetry. Thank you for letting me speak. I love you all.
100%.
God bless.
100%. I think you just hit the nail on the head. 100%. Okay, I'm going to end this then with a poem that Roger has read to us multiple times. And so we're going to read this poem and end it. So anybody else who wants to contribute first, please raise your hand and we'll give you a chance to speak, and then we'll end it with this poem. Bobby, Jade, iFoot, everybody who's been here, it's been great having you. We do this at the same time on Wednesday every evening, and I think we've been going for about 3 or so hours now, maybe 4 or 5. So you'll figure it out. Or Roger will post another space that'll have the time if you want to come back. Okay, let's see what we can do here. You guys talked about that which is archetypal, that can't be taken out. So anyway, I'm going to not talk about it. Let's just read this poem. It's called Enough Words. How does a part of the world leave the world? How can wetness leave water? Don't try to pull out a fire by throwing on more fire. Don't wash a wound with blood. No matter how fast you run, your shadow more than keeps up. Sometimes it's in front. Only full overhead sun diminishes your shadow. But that shadow has been serving you. What hurts you blesses you. Darkness in your candle. Your boundaries are your quest. I can explain this, but it would break the glass cover on your heart, and there is no fixing that. You must have shadow and light, source both. Listen and lay your head under the tree of awe. When from that tree feathers and wings sprout on you, be quieter than a dove. Don't open your mouth for even a coo. When a frog slips into the water, the snake cannot get it. Then the frog climbs back out and croaks, and the snake moves toward him again. Even if the frog learned to hiss, still the snake would hear through the hiss the information he needed, the frog voice underneath. But if the frog could be completely silent, then the snake would go back to sleeping. The frog could reach the barley. The soul lives there in the silent breath. And that grain of barley is such that when you put it in the ground, it grows.
Okay, that was long. We're going to end it there.